question. Are you happy with the school that your kids go to? We know that not all schools are created equally. Where you live, of course, is one of the key determinants, but there's a bit of a shake-up underway in school enrolments. Admissions to a school will be limited to the physical size of the school under the considerations currently before the state government. Apparently, demountables are on the nose, and the student population will be based entirely on the number of permanent buildings at each school. So, first to go will be out-of-area enrolments. Maybe you've got a child at a school where you no longer qualify for enrolment. Did you move? Did you maybe secure the enrolment for some legacy reason, such as siblings went to the school? Well, none of that's guaranteed. Imagine now if you've got special needs and placements are hard to find. Newcastle University Education Lecturer David Roy is with me now to discuss this. David, thanks for doing that, by the way.
No worries, Paul.
Let's start with the whole issue of being physically close to a school. Is that the best way to run an education system, do you reckon?
Well, there's no one solvable answer, and I guess it has been decided across many systems, not just in Australia but elsewhere, that a school is put in an area because there's a population of children, and it should be built at a size to meet the needs of that population of children, and going to your local school is always seen as the best idea because therefore the school becomes part of the community and it helps to create community cohesion. But of course, with our modern world, people have changed their lifestyles and they move and they see an attraction of a school and it can change house prices, but there's never going to be one fixed solution. So I guess it's the best system we have at the moment.
If you've got challenges in a suburb, often they can be reflected within the school environment. It can be difficult attracting good teachers if a school has a bad reputation. So it can become a bit of a self-fulfilling philosophy. It can fall into a bit of a spiral, the outcomes for school.
Well, yeah, exactly, and that's why it's really important to ensure that when we're dealing with policy to do with education, that we look at the wider social community, because we can't just make changes within a school. We have to have politicians looking at the wider social impacts around there, because the school affects the community and also issues within the community can affect the school. And we actually need to deal with these things and maybe have a bit longer planning going on in our society to ensure that there's equity for all. Having, I guess, a system in Australia with such a large non-government section that gets funded widely, and I'm not going to argue the pros and cons of that, but that does change the circumstances slightly for Australia and New South Wales in particular.
What about students with special needs then, David? I mean, obviously smaller schools can't provide behavioural classes. They can't provide remedial teaching resources, for example. They can't provide for people that struggle through with a disability, for example. Yeah. So those challenges then get amplified, don't they?
Well, yeah, when we're talking about children now with particularly diverse needs, whether it's behavioural or it's because English is a second language or low SES or disability, then yeah, there's always going to be challenges within the system, and that's why the system needs to be flexible to a degree to ensure that they are funding and providing the resources to the schools so that those children can actually partake, because by not doing so, we're discriminating against those kids, saying, well, all kids are equal, but some are more equal than others. So that's more of a system issue, and that's why we had things such as the parliamentary inquiry. The issue we've got for enrolment is there have been instances, and there still are instances, of schools which should be enrolling kids in the local area, but are using the argument of reasonable adjustment as an excuse not to enrol those kids, and those kids have to go to a school out of area, which then becomes almost a honeypot for whatever the challenging issue. And this has been particularly the case for children with a disability. So these new rules, I would argue, if they're going to implement them where you must go to your local school and you can't go out of the area, then those local schools must provide the resources, must provide the staffing, must provide the education for children with a disability. Otherwise, we're not applying the rules equitably across the board. And I'm a great believer in equity.
David, if we don't have a good plan, though, isn't that going to put enormous pressure on individual schools if they have one child that needs a ramp, for example? And we're not arguing that there shouldn't be ramps, but the legacy of it is that not all schools have adequate provisions as we stand at this point in time. And it's while we aspire to having a perfect environment for our kids of varying needs, clearly that's not the case at the moment.
Well, that's why I strongly believe that if we're going to be serious about children in our community, then that should be a separate budget line from the government to support those needs, as opposed to meeting the educational expectations of all the kids in the school. And that's always going to be the issue. It's why we had the New South Wales Disability Inquiry, and New South Wales Education is making massive changes towards this to create that equitable route for all. But we have to recognise that these are children. Any child should be given that opportunity. The bigger issue is the impact of this policy just being put across the board without potentially a transition period. I do get concerned for, say, families who've got siblings in a school, and the family just moves 2 streets away, and that means the younger child would be out of area for their school and wouldn't be able to go to the same school as their older brother or sister might do. And that's going to cause issues for families within New South Wales.
We've already got some families telling porkies to try and get enrolled in school. They're using Nan and Pop's address and all the rest of it. As you say, there'll never be a perfect system, but gee, having an element of choice would be a wonderful outcome, wouldn't it?
It would be, but the problem that we have with that is it does actually create massive social inequity within the community. Because if there's as I termed it, a honeypot school, then people buy into that area. The house prices go up. It means another area gets deprived and it doesn't have the same variety of individuals. By ensuring that people actually have to go to the school where they live, then at least you're going to negate that to a degree. We're always going to have that aspect of buying into a more expensive area. But by creating lots of, I guess, out-of-school placements, it can actually deprive some of the local kids from getting access to some of the resources. It means that we, at the current state, have our playgrounds full of demountables, so kids don't actually have the room to move and exercise and de-stress from the processing and learning that they're going through. So fundamentally, this is probably quite a good policy, but we'd also force the government to do some planning and maybe realise when there's a birth rate, maybe plan for 5 years down the line that we might need additional schooling for those kids who are being born. And I've never quite understood how governments can't match the birth rate to the need for new schools at primary or secondary years down the line, because kids don't get born and go straight to school. There's a 5-year wait time.
Yeah. Is it possible to ever have strict objective standards? So schools, this is the formula, or every school must have it?
No, you can't ever do that. There must be a flexibility in any system. And one of the problems we have with bureaucracy is it's a tick box mentality. It's good to have systems in place and to have policies and a direction to flow, but there must be a movement within there to allow variance within human beings, because schools are about children, they're about human beings, and therefore there's always going to be a wide variety of the human element playing in there. So that flexibility must be given, but it must be under particular conditions to allow the community to thrive. Because what we want most of all is not just value buildings that are fit for purpose, but we actually just want kids to be educated in the best way possible. And sometimes that might involve the odd out-of-area placement.
David, good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Great to be here, Paul. Thanks.
There's Dr. Roy from the University of Newcastle, education lecturer. What do you think? Do you agree that there should be some element of choice? We're getting a bit of feedback, and I'll give you more comment or bring you more commentary on that in just a tick from our Facebook contributors and those who've sent us a text to 048799 1233.